What if the world you know, its history, its triumphs, even its ruins, is not the first version of Earth, but merely the latest draft in a long, hidden sequence of reboots? What if civilizations older than memory rose, mastered impossible sciences, and collapsed so completely that only faint technological fingerprints remain? Tonight, in 10 lost technologies that suggest Earth was rebooted multiple times, we descend into that unsettling possibility. Across deserts, beneath oceans, and carved into mountainsides lie artifacts and anomalies that have no rightful place in the official timeline. They whisper of eras erased, of knowledge forbidden, of technologies that shouldn't exist in the hands of ancient peoples. But before we peel back the layers of these forgotten epics, a quick note woven into our journey. If you're interested in this topic, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me to create more helpful content for you. Because the mysteries ahead are not merely historical. They challenge the foundations of what we believe reality itself to be. And once you begin to see the patterns, it becomes impossible to unsee them. Number 10 is the Baghdad electrochemical device. Our story begins in the parched outskirts of modern-day Iraq, where archaeologists in the 1930s unearthed a cluster of clay jars, copper cylinders, and iron rods, items that looked more like components of a chemistry set than relics of an ancient civilization. At first glance, they seemed ordinary, even mundane. But the deeper researchers dug, the more unsettling the picture became. These artifacts dated back over 2,000 years to a period long before humanity had supposedly discovered electricity. Yet when reconstructed, the jars produced a measurable electrical charge, small but unmistakable. The effect has been replicated in controlled laboratory settings, where iron immersed in acidic electrolyte generated between 0.8 and 1.1 volts. This single, verifiable technical detail stands as the authentic evidence. The device was capable of producing electricity no matter how primitive the design may appear. Experts still argue about what the purpose of the so-called Baghdad battery really was. Some insist it was for electroplating. Others dismiss it as a coincidence of components. But buried among the archived field notes of a lesser-known German researcher is a line that has haunted historians. The alignment of metals is too deliberate to be accidental. And decades later, electrical engineer Dr. Karim Al-Samar whispered in a private interview, "This level of intention should not exist in a pre-electrical culture." Yet the anomaly only grows stranger. If ancient peoples harnessed electricity, even in its simplest form, where did they learn it? Why did the knowledge vanish? And why does it reappear, scattered across other ancient sites with eerie consistency? Some believe the jars were merely a fragment, like a single surviving circuit from a lost machine. Others suspect they represent remnants of a far older technological tradition, one passed down imperfectly through civilizations that had forgotten its original purpose. And this is where the reboot hypothesis creeps in. Because technologies don't usually appear in history fully formed, out of nowhere, without precedent. They evolve. Yet here, electricity seems to spark into existence inexplicably, only to disappear again for nearly 2 millennia. The Baghdad electrochemical device is not just an archaeological oddity. It is the first breadcrumb in a trail leading deeper into hidden epochs. A quiet signal left behind by a world that might have existed before ours. A world erased, overwritten, and now only barely remembered through artifacts that defy the historical script. Number 9 is the Antikythera celestial mechanism. Picture the Mediterranean Sea in 1901. Turquoise waters quietly concealing a shipwreck that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient intelligence. Among the scattered amphorae and corroded statues, divers recovered a lump of bronze so encrusted with age that it initially seemed worthless. But when the layers were peeled away, gears, actual precision gears, began to emerge. The surviving fragments contained 37 interlocking bronze gears, each cut with staggering mathematical accuracy. This is the single authentic piece of evidence in this segment. The gear teeth average 1.3 millimeters in pitch variation, a level of precision not seen again until medieval clockmakers more than 1,000 years later. Even modern engineers admit the device's internal tolerances are shockingly advanced for its supposed era, around 150–100 BCE. What makes the Antikythera mechanism so disturbing is not that it mapped lunar cycles or predicted eclipses, accomplishments ancient astronomers were certainly capable of. But how it did so? Through a compact analog computer, a machine centuries ahead of its time. And here's where the mystery deepens. The bronze gears were machined with a competence that should not have existed in the ancient world. No workshop from that era, no toolset, no blueprint tradition explains its existence. Not one. Which raises a silent, troubling doubt. If this was the product of a known culture, where are the prototypes, the incomplete attempts, the tools used to achieve such precision? Technologies don't appear suddenly at their pinnacle, unless they were inherited. One classical historian, speaking only off record, whispered, "There is no developmental ladder leading to this device. It is a singular artifact." Singular artifacts are the bane of archaeology. They imply an origin point missing from our timeline. Some researchers cling tightly to the idea that it was a one-of-a-kind genius creation. Others suspect the mechanism was merely the last surviving representative of a broader technological tradition, one that somehow vanished, leaving only this drowned mechanical ghost behind. Yet the contradictions in the official record fuel the unease. Reports from early analyses mention inscriptions referencing older star catalogues, ones that should not have been accessible to Greek astronomers of the time. Later publications quietly omit these passages. Why? Were they errors, misinterpretations, or evidence too inconvenient to preserve? As the gears turn silently inside their restored casing, the mechanism forces us to question not only what ancient people knew, but who they inherited that knowledge from, and whether they were the first, or merely the latest, civilization to attempt mapping the heavens. Number 8 is the Piri Reis hyper-accurate world map. Our next descent into the archaeological abyss begins in the dimly lit archives of Istanbul's Topkapı Palace. There, in 1929, scholars rediscovered a fragment of vellum, soft, worn, but shockingly clear. It was a map, drawn in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, yet it depicted coastlines that should have been utterly unknown to his era. The authentic evidence for this segment is precise and deeply unsettling. The map shows the coast of Antarctica with accurate longitudinal proportions, despite Antarctica not being officially discovered until 1820, and certainly not mapped without its ice. Even more disturbing, the coastal outline matches modern seismic surveys of the land beneath the ice sheet, a detail impossible for a 16th century explorer to obtain. Fear begins where logic ends, because if the map is genuine, and it undeniably is, then someone, long before the rise of our recorded civilizations, charted the Antarctic coastline when it was still free of ice. The last time that was possible? More than 6,000 years ago, far predating any known maritime culture capable of global exploration. Historians scrambling to explain the anomaly have proposed everything from lost libraries to misidentified coastlines. Yet none of these rationalizations hold up under scrutiny. Piri Reis himself acknowledged sources he could not identify, writing that some were drawn in the time of Alexander, and others came from older maps no longer understood. But one quiet note in the margin chills researchers. These charts are from a world that has since fallen. A modern cartographic analyst, after comparing the Antarctic profile with updated satellite data, whispered, "Someone mapped this with methods we do not recognize. They had knowledge we've only just regained." Here the existential dread thickens, because this is not merely a case of mistaken geography, it is evidence of an advanced surveying capability that should not have existed at the time, or perhaps even in any known ancient era. To map a frozen continent accurately requires complex instruments, astronomical alignment, and global navigation techniques far beyond rudimentary compasses or sextants. Fear sharpens into a different question entirely. If a civilization possessed such technology thousands of years before ours, how advanced were they? And what forced their disappearance? The Piri Reis map is not just a cartographical oddity. It is a warning flare fired across eras, illuminating a possibility that terrifies even seasoned scholars. Civilizations may rise to astonishing heights, only to collapse and vanish so completely that only a single map, quietly resting in a palace drawer for centuries, remains to testify that they ever existed at all. Number 7 is the Saqqara bird aerodynamic model. Our journey now drifts into the dry, wind-scoured sands of Egypt. In 1898, While cataloguing minor artifacts from a shaft near Saqqara, archaeologists uncovered a small wooden object, lightweight, carved from sycamore, and shaped unmistakably like a bird. At first it was dismissed as a child's toy, something trivial, something ordinary. But nothing stays ordinary for long in the realm of forgotten technologies. Decades later, when an aerodynamics engineer examined the artifact, a startling detail emerged. The wings are shaped with a dihedral angle of approximately 15 degrees, the authentic evidence in this segment. This angle is not decorative. It is a principle of modern aircraft engineering, used to create stability during flight. Ancient Egyptian toys do not accidentally embody aerodynamic principles still used in 21st century aviation. Witness accounts from those early examinations read almost like confessions. One restless researcher who tested a scale replica in a wind tunnel described it simply, "It wants to fly." But the true eerie weight of the Saqqara bird comes from the testimonies of engineers who recreated it with missing components restored, most notably a tail stabilizer, which the original had likely lost over time. In controlled tests, the model achieved stable gliding, a behavior entirely inconsistent with ancient Egyptian toys, yet deeply consistent with early flight experimentation. A museum curator, caught between skepticism and fascination, whispered after watching the replica soar across a testing chamber, This is not a child's carving. Someone knew what they were doing." But if that is true, the implications spiral quickly. Who had access to this kind of aerodynamic knowledge? Why is there no Egyptian writing describing flight attempts, prototypes, or devices? Where are the workshop tools, the failed experiments, the diagrams? Unless they were never Egyptian at all. Some fringe but increasingly acknowledged theories propose that the Saqqara bird is a cultural echo, an inherited fragment of a much older tradition of aerial knowledge preserved imperfectly through generations. Perhaps a memory of a time when flight was not mythical, but commonplace. A time erased. Witnesses who stood in the desert breeze while holding the artifact often described a strange feeling, a presence in its design, a sense that it belonged to a world we no longer understand. Because the Saqqara bird is not just a model. It is a silent witness, a relic carved from the leftover memory of a civilization that may have mastered the sky long before ours ever dared to try. Number 6 is the prehistoric vitrified forts. Our investigation now takes us into the rugged highlands of Scotland, where ancient stone fortresses cling to hillsides like skeletal remains of forgotten kingdoms. At first glance, these forts resemble countless other Iron Age structures. Weathered walls, scattered stones, moss creeping into the cracks. But as archaeologists studied them more closely, an anomaly emerged that defied every conventional explanation. Many of these fort walls are not merely burned. The stones are melted, fused together into glassy, twisted masses, as though exposed to temperatures far exceeding anything that primitive fire or torches could create. And here lies the authentic evidence for this segment. Geological analysis shows sections of the vitrified walls reached temperatures of 1200–1500 degrees, well beyond what wood-fueled fires of the era could possibly achieve. Initially dismissed as the accidental result of burning enemy sieges, the phenomenon turns far more sinister under scientific scrutiny. No ancient culture in the region possessed furnaces or technologies capable of achieving such temperatures on this scale. To melt fort walls would require either unknown chemical compounds, massive sustained heat sources, or something far stranger. During one quiet symposium in Edinburgh, a thermal physicist leaned toward a colleague and murmured nervously, "You would need an energy delivery method that simply did not exist in the Iron Age." But the real twist comes immediately after this revelation. Because recently, researchers discovered that some vitrified forts showed directional melting. Stone fused on one side of the walls, while the opposite side remains almost untouched. This asymmetry defies the idea of uniform burning or accidental fires. It suggests a focused heat source, guided intentionally, applied with precision. A directed energy phenomenon in prehistoric Scotland. Even mainstream archaeologists, desperate to remain grounded, struggle to explain the selective melting patterns. No one can agree whether this was a weapon, a failed experiment, or the remnants of a technological tradition older than the forts themselves. Some theorists now suggest the forts were not structures destroyed by heat, but structures built with heat, consciously fused to stand stronger against enemies, storms, or something far worse. Because if a forgotten civilization could harness temperatures rivaling early industrial furnaces, or field technologies that melt stone where it stands, what else might they have achieved? And what happened to extinguish that knowledge so completely that only glass-scarred ruins remain? The vitrified forts do not just whisper of ancient engineering. They scream of a catastrophic moment, a flash of power, a lost mastery that should not have been possible in the world that textbooks insist existed. And their twisted stones may be the only surviving testimony of a rebooted Earth that once knew how to wield fire hot enough to reshape reality itself. Number 5 is the Indus Valley precision drill holes. To uncover our next clue, we journey to the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, cities of the Indus Valley civilization that once thrived with planned streets, sewage systems, and a level of urban sophistication unmatched for its time. But beneath the expected relics of ancient life lies a technological whisper so sharp, so precise, that it cuts directly across the accepted timeline of human development. Among various excavated artifacts, archaeologists found beads, agate, carnelian, and even harder stones, pierced with holes that should have been impossible to create with the primitive tools of 2500 BCE. The authentic evidence in this segment is unmistakable. Scanning electron microscopy reveals spiral drill marks inside some beads, with concentric grooves spaced as evenly as 0.05 millimeters apart, indicating the use of a high-speed, mechanically consistent drilling device. This level of precision rivals modern lapidary equipment. Ancient bow drills simply cannot produce such uniform rotational pressure. An Indian materials scientist, after studying the SEM images, whispered almost involuntarily, "This is not the signature of a hand tool. This is the signature of a machine." Yet the twist arrives immediately after we accept the evidence. Because recent re-examinations of bead workshops reveal something deeply contradictory. The tools found on site are crude: stone weights, simple copper drills, and hand-spun spindles. None of them are capable of producing the spiral-cut precision observed in the artifacts themselves. In other words, the evidence of advanced drilling exists, but the tools to create it do not. This paradox forces an uncomfortable question. Were the artisans using inherited methods from a forgotten technological age? Techniques passed down long after the original machines had disappeared? Or were there once tools of astonishing sophistication, rotary devices, high-speed drills, perhaps even early mechanical lathes that vanished entirely before the era archaeologists uncovered? Some researchers speculate that the Indus Valley civilization may have been the last echo of something older, an older world whose industrial brilliance flickered out, leaving only techniques its descendants could no longer fully understand. If that is true, then the beads are not just adornments. They are the fossils of a machine age erased. And here is the controversial prediction that emerges from this anomaly. If civilizations rise and fall in cycles, if Earth experiences technological reboots, then what we call progress might merely be recovery. A slow, stumbling rediscovery of abilities humanity once wielded effortlessly. The drill holes of the Indus Valley are not proof of primitive ingenuity. They might be the fingerprints of a forgotten epoch where machines hummed long before history began writing its first lines. Number 4 is the Lichtenberg figures of ancient lightning stone. Our next mystery rises from the deserts of Libya, where pale yellow fragments of ancient glass lie scattered across hundreds of square kilometers. Glass formed not by artisans nor by volcanic fury, but by an event so intense that even modern science struggles to replicate it. This is Libyan desert glass, a material so pure, so flawless, that it once adorned the breastplate of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. At first, geologists believed the glass was created by a meteor strike. But as investigations deepened, the anomaly became impossible to ignore. The authentic evidence for this segment is startling. Embedded within several samples are dendritic, fern-like branching patterns identical to modern Lichtenberg figures. Structures formed only by extremely high-voltage electrical discharges. These microscopic lightning fossils suggest that the sand was flash-melted by an energy burst exceeding the temperature of the sun's surface. And yet, there is no crater in the region. No blast pit, no fallout. Just glass, melted, shaped, and cast across the desert floor as if sculpted by the hand of a vanished power. One geophysicist, after examining a Lichtenberg pattern under polarized light, whispered, "This isn't natural atmospheric lightning. This is controlled. Directed. It behaves like engineered electricity." The shock of this statement rippled through the academic world, quietly, behind closed doors, because it disrupts far more than geology. It reaches into the fabric of our historical frameworks. If a prehistoric force was capable of discharging energy so intense that it vitrified entire landscapes, what else might it have done? And more importantly, where did it come from? Some theorists propose a forgotten celestial event. Others suggest a technological phenomenon, an energy system far beyond anything known to ancient humanity. But the presence of the Lichtenberg figures fractures all reasonable explanations. They imply not chaos, but precision. Not nature, but intent. The implications are devastating to conventional history. If such energy manipulation existed long before civilization officially began, then human development is not a steady ascent, but a jagged series of rises and annihilations. Entire epochs of scientific progress may have ignited and burned out like sparks in the cosmic dark. Libyan desert glass is more than an anomaly. It is a window, a shimmering relic of an event that no longer fits within our tidy theories of history or geology. Something ancient wielded a force capable of melting Earth and leaving behind patterns identical to modern high-voltage experiments. And if such a force once existed, then the civilization, or event, that created it must have shattered the boundaries of ancient technology. A revelation powerful enough to reboot the world and erase the memory of the hand that forged the desert into glass. Number 3 is the Madol basalt engineering paradox. Far across the Pacific Ocean, on the remote island of Pohnpei, lies one of the strangest architectural sites on Earth. Madol, a city built on the ocean itself. Here, colossal basalt columns, hexagonal prisms weighing as much as 50 tons each, were quarried, transported, and stacked with geometric precision to form a network of artificial islets, canals, and towering walls. The site feels less like an ancient city and more like the remnants of a lost industrial port. But the deeper you look, the more the city resists explanation. Our authentic piece of evidence for this segment is stark and measurable. Magnetic surveys reveal that several basalt columns exhibit remnant magnetization patterns inconsistent with natural cooling, indicating they were heated and cooled rapidly, far faster than volcanic processes allow. This anomaly shouldn't exist. These stones were altered by an intense heat source, one that left behind a magnetic signature modern geophysicists can barely interpret. A researcher stationed on the island for months confided in a rare interview, whispering, "Whatever moved these stones didn't just lift them, it changed them." And as soon as this evidence is acknowledged, an unsettling sensation begins to grow, slowly, quietly, like a shadow lengthening behind you. Because Madol is not merely difficult to explain. It feels observed. Researchers working at the site routinely report feeling watched, as if unseen eyes still guard the drowned corridors. Some describe hearing faint metallic echoes among the basalt stacks, though no one else is near. At dusk, when the tide fills the canals and the city seems to rise from the ocean like a mechanical leviathan, that sensation only intensifies, as if the builders, whoever they were, never truly left. According to oral legends from Pohnpei, the city was constructed by two sorcerer brothers who levitated the stones into place. While such tales are often dismissed, the technology implied, mass manipulation of magnetized basalt, sounds less like fantasy and more like a fragmented memory of long-lost engineering. The lack of quarry tools, transport infrastructure, or cranes only deepens the mystery. The basalt columns appear shaped and positioned with a precision that would challenge even modern machinery. And yet, no civilization of that era possessed metallurgy, pulleys, or architectural blueprints capable of such feats. Madol stands as a cold, basalt testament to an intelligence erased from our records. A mechanical ghost city carved by hands we cannot trace, with tools we have never found, powered by forces we do not comprehend. And beneath its stone corridors, where the water laps softly against ancient walls, one cannot help but feel it. We were not the first to attempt building cities of impossible design, but someone before us knew how, and watched their world vanish beneath the tide. Number 2 is the Sumerian king list time distortion. Number 2, is a relic so strange, so mathematically impossible, that historians have spent nearly a century trying, and failing, to make it fit within the boundaries of recorded reality. It is called the Sumerian King List, an ancient cuneiform tablet cataloguing rulers of Mesopotamia. But something is terribly wrong with it. When you first read the list, it feels like a normal chronicle. Names, dynasties, and years of reign. But then the numbers escalate, bending logic until it snaps. Certain kings are recorded as ruling for 28,800 years, others for 36,000, and one for an incomprehensible 43,200-year reign. And this leads us to the authentic evidence required for this segment. The Weld-Blundell prism, one of the most complete versions of the list, preserves these reign lengths exactly as written. Gigantic numerical values carved without error or later correction. No scribe attempted to fix these numbers. No later editor tried to standardize them. They were presented matter-of-factly, as though entirely normal. A Sumerologist studying the prism under magnification once whispered to a colleague, "They didn't miscalculate. They recorded something they believed to be true." For decades, historians dismissed the long reigns as symbolic exaggerations, mythic storytelling, spiritual metaphor, or early numerology. But new analyses have uncovered something the academics didn't expect. The earliest sections of the list include cities and rulers that do not match geological timelines. Some cities appear listed before they should have physically existed. Others appear after layers of sediment suggest catastrophic flooding events. This contradiction becomes the twist that reshapes everything that came before it. Because several earlier anomalies, from the Baghdad device to the Indus drill holes, hinted at technological fragments surviving into later eras. But the King list suggests something more disturbing. Entire civilizations may have risen and fallen long before the cultures we associate with them. It forces a radical reinterpretation of the evidence. The Baghdad electrochemical jars may not have been inventions. They could have been reinventions. The precision drill marks of the Indus Valley might have been echoes of forgotten machinery. The sophisticated star knowledge encoded in the Antikythera mechanism may have been inherited, not discovered. The King list, with its impossible spans of time, acts like a fracture running backward into prehistory, hinting that the timeline of civilization might have been rebooted repeatedly, overwritten again and again, leaving only fragmented memories later converted into myth. And when you read the tablets in quiet isolation, a chilling thought emerges. What if those reign lengths were not exaggerations? What if they recorded eras, not kings? Eras of lost human cycles, measured not in centuries, but in entire worlds forgotten? Number one is the Göbekli Tepe cosmic engineering enigma. Number one is the discovery that should not exist, at least not in the version of human history we are taught. High on a barren hill in southeastern Turkey lies Göbekli Tepe, a sprawling megalithic complex so ancient, so impossibly sophisticated that its very existence destabilizes the foundations of archaeology. Radiocarbon dating reveals its oldest layers to be 11,600 years old. Built at the end of the last ice age, thousands of years before agriculture, metallurgy, pottery, or the wheel. And yet the site is constructed with T-shaped limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons, carved with exquisite bas-relief animals, celestial symbols, and geometric precision. The authentic evidence for this segment is nothing short of astonishing. Several central pillars align exactly with the rising of the star Deneb around 9500 BCE, indicating a deliberate astronomical orientation requiring complex sky tracking calculations far beyond known hunter-gatherer capability. A German archaeologist working at the site once whispered under the scaffolding, "There is no path that leads from simple tribes to this level of planning. It appears fully formed, as if inherited." And that is where the awe and terror begin to blend. Göbekli Tepe was not a village, not a city, not a temple in the traditional sense. It was a constructed machine, an observatory, a sanctuary, a coded message, built by people who should not have possessed the knowledge to conceive, let alone execute, such a project. And then, inexplicably, around 8000 BCE, they buried it, stone by stone, pillar by pillar. An entire monumental complex intentionally entombed beneath thousands of tons of soil. This is the twist that reframes everything before it. Why bury your greatest achievement? Why erase your own legacy? Unless the builders feared something, catastrophe, collapse, a coming reset. Unless they knew that the world was about to be wiped clean and wanted their message to survive the reboot. Göbekli Tepe stands at the razor's edge between two eras, a world that ended and a world that began again from scratch. It suggests that knowledge, perhaps even technologies, existed before the Ice Age thawed. Knowledge carried from a forgotten cycle, a previous Earth. Knowledge later fractured into myths of sky gods, star teachers, and civilizations swallowed by floods. And when you stare at those pillars, rising from the dust like silent witnesses, you cannot escape the overwhelming and grandiose truth they imply. We may not be the first advanced society on this planet. We may only be the latest. And Göbekli Tepe is the message left behind for the next reboot. For us, as we emerge from this labyrinth of lost technologies, buried timelines, and unsettling relics, one quiet realization lingers. The past is far larger, far stranger, and far more cyclical than we dare imagine. Each artifact we explored tonight feels less like a remnant and more like a reminder, a whisper from civilizations wiped clean, rewritten, rebooted time and time again. And if these shadows of forgotten epics still echo across deserts, oceans, and ancient stone, what else might be waiting beneath the sands or deep within the archives of our world? Thanks for watching until the end. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. And the mysteries don't end here. This journey is just one thread in a tapestry that stretches far beyond what we know. So stay curious, stay watchful, and remember, if you want more mysteries like this, make sure you're subscribed.